Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Family Sedan channel, and something very strange happened today. An individual filed an application to file an amicus brief today. And so there are a number of things that are weird about this. First, I'll note that the application to file, that deadline passed 5 days ago, so it's past the deadline as a result. Not sure if Judge Torres is going to allow this one, even just on that basis. She's been pretty lenient. She's accepted amicus briefs in favor of the SEC that, frankly, were outside of what she said she'd be willing to accept, so she's been lenient. Maybe it gets in anyway, despite that. But this amicus brief, again, from an individual, speaking on behalf of the public at large, effectively here, that's the goal, doesn't cite XRP specifically once. Now, the brief technically references something that I assume is XRP, but XRP is not in this entire document. It gets even more weird, though, because this particular author of this document, this amicus brief, he's not in favor of the SEC, but he also doesn't like Ripple. It's interesting, but he's pro-crypto. He doesn't like the government. So it's just like, it's weird. The purpose of this is not clear. I don't know what this guy was trying to get at, but this is the weirdest thing that has been filed in the SEC v. Ripple case, in my humble opinion, which is basically as good as fact, right? So I'm going to share with you perspective from a couple attorneys within the XRP community. One of the attorneys within the XRP community read this thing and said that it was, quote, totally strange, end quote. And I'll run through this with you as well. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a legal or financial background of any kind. I'm not offering legal or financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. Shout out and credit to James K. Filan, attorney and member of the XRP community. Thank you very much, Mr. Filan, for sharing this interesting document, let's say. There's some stuff in here I read, I'd read a sentence and then I just stop, and I just had this look like, what? And then I'd reread it like a few more times sometimes, and this I don't know what he's getting at. This doesn't necessarily make sense. So here is what attorney Jeremy Hogan had to say in response to this. He wrote, "This is an interesting amicus brief. Technically, it's 5 days late. He wants to bring a macroeconomic argument to the court, but trying to do this pro se, which means just individually, effectively." And then Attorney Hogan says, "I don't think it works well, even if the judge allows it in." Here's what Attorney Bill Morgan had to say, member of the XRP community. He said, in reference to this amicus brief, he does not bother to explain why he is late and should obtain an indulgence to have a late motion heard and granted. That is one problem. His next problem is that he criticizes Ripple's business model as depending on informational asymmetry, but does not explain at all reasons or evidence for such a conclusion apart from some vague notion that regulatory compliance, and by implication registration and disclosure reporting, is needed by investors to decide with whom to conduct business. Yeah, and so let me you'll see as we go through this. He complains about Ripple. He's not a fan of Ripple, obviously, and he doesn't articulate reasons why. He makes assertions about Ripple benefiting from the current environment in general, as if they're just some sort of opportunistic entity. And it also seems like he says, and again, they don't actually say XRP, which is super duper weird. But, cite that there weren't effectively, and I'll get his specific wording as we go through this, but effectively not sufficient disclosures made, which sounds like very much like SEC type language anyway, but he's against the SEC too. Anyway, and then Attorney Morgan says, thirdly, he argues the SEC mostly isn't the appropriate regulator, and the Howey test is not an appropriate basis for crypto regulatory action, something we can all agree on, but asks the court to mandate that Treasury adopt oversight of crypto, which the court has no power to do. Yeah, I'll pause to note that too. That's kind of how he wraps up this thing. He says that the court should I think he used the word mandate, that this power, over crypto to the Treasury. Congress has the power. This guy doesn't seem to understand that, which is weird. I don't get it, guys. Like I said, this is super duper weird. I've never seen anything like this in my entire damn life. And then Attorney Morgan says, I'll just read that part. Fourthly, he finishes by stating that unless the judiciary steps up the public interest, which is very vaguely identified, will not prevail. But he doesn't identify whose summary judgment motion he supports or opposes. It is a totally strange brief. It is a brief in support of the amorphous public interest. Now that is spot on. And then he tagged me along with some others. So thank you very much, Attorney Morgan, for tagging me in that. And I think your analysis is pretty well spot on here. So let's get into this train wreck. Let me scroll down. By the way, so this thing, you can notice at the bottom of your page, 18 pages, but the actual amicus brief itself is like 3.5 pages. But even then, that's not quite precise because about half of a page in one of the pages is a chart. And so it's more like 3 pages over the span of 4 pieces of paper. That's more so what it's like. So let me scroll down here. I need to get to this page right here. And so this is actually part of what he wrote in the application to file the amicus brief. And so just as a friendly reminder, in order to file an amicus brief, the rules of the court mandate that you must file an application to submit an amicus brief. Now you can, and he did, include the amicus brief in your application to file an amicus brief, but then once the judge says, yes, you can, then you have to submit the brief again, which seems redundant, but that's just how this works. But he wrote here the following, which made people think that he was like, and initially, like before I read this whole thing, because somebody highlighted this on, more than one person highlighted this on Twitter, I was thinking, okay, is this a no-coiner? That was my first reaction, but it actually turns out no, this guy's against the US dollar, but still wrote the following. In the instant matter, the outcome of this case may influence the ability of the US dollar to remain the dominant global reserve currency. Now, folks, again, having no additional context, I just saw somebody share that before I read this earlier today all up on the Twitters. I was like, okay, so this guy does not want the US dollar to cease to be the global reserve currency. I don't think that's true after reading this thing. So that was probably a false assumption on my part, but I didn't know where this guy was coming, and it's just weird. So let's go ahead and jump into this thing, because I printed this up and made a couple notes here. I ended up, thing's so short, I was just like, I'm just going to cover the whole damn thing. It's so short. So check this out. I think this is the page right here. Yeah, right here. Okay, so right at the top. Point number 1. Rationale for the developments of digital currency. And by the way, again, just as we go through this again, no reference of XRP at all in the SEC v. Ripple case amicus brief. What in the hell? Anyway, abstracting from mere profit motivations and focusing on the public interest, we note that, quote, it is critical to understand that digital currency, specifically Bitcoin, was created in direct response to the failure of global regulators to protect the public in the years leading up to the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008. Thus, the social and monetary functionality of cryptocurrency is superior to that of paper money. Eventually, cryptocurrency is going to dominate, end quote. Okay, I want to note that that's a quote, so it means he's highlighting something that somebody else said. He never says who said that. You can look, there's a footnote at the bottom that doesn't explain who said it. I didn't find it anywhere else in this thing. And it should be on this page, but it isn't. So I'm telling you guys, this is bizarre stuff here. And this is what he sent to Judge Torres. What in the ever-loving hell? So we're just gonna have to gloss over that because I don't know. I literally have no idea. It's just in there. I got a kick out of some of this stuff. So I just thought, yeah, I'm still covering this on a lukewarm video on the Moon Family Sedan channel. Anyway, this amicus brief, if you want to call it that, continues. As the amicus and the facts cited above demonstrate, inadequate consideration of the public interest has damaged the public and investors. Current regulatory practices protect the monetary interest of a narrow set of non-minority persons, fail to protect the interest of the general public, and damage the country's long-term economic prospects. So look, I can actually get behind what the guy says in terms of the SEC and not having sufficient regulatory clarity, and it's obviously an insider's club effectively, the way that this is treated. I think most of us would agree on that, but still, this is a kooky mess. And then we get to Roman numeral 2, rather, which he titled Inclusion Myths. And this is very short. He just wrote, we note claims by participants in this field that cite the ability of digital currency technologies to increase financial inclusion. These are the same faulty arguments used to promote subprime lending in the years leading up to the financial crisis of 2008. We note that there is no objective independent data to support this contention. What do we even do? What do we even do with this? What does this have to do with the SEC v. Ripple case? Like, literally nothing. And on this point, as far as financial inclusion, if you make it easier for people to have access to any sort of part of the world of finance, even new finance in the world of crypto, and all you need is a phone and an internet connection, well, that is inclusive. And so you can say that you argued that it was inclusive to promote subprime lending in the years leading up to financial crisis of 2008. Well, these are two different types of inclusion for very different purposes. They're not the same. He's comparing an apple to an orange. But just by using one word, inclusion. That's the only similarity in these concepts. Other than that, they're completely different. My God, like it's incoherent. It just is. That's not an argument. That's not a reasonable position. Comparing those two things, does he actually think that, or is he just saying a thing? It's weird. Then you get to Roman numeral 3, functions of money. Further, cryptocurrency and blockchain highlight the hidden function of money. The widely recognized main functions of money are as a medium of exchange, a unit of account, and store of value. And that's true. So I'll pause and note that's broadly how money is described. I always start by describing money as a trust system because without trust, the rest of the stuff can't happen anyway. So I think it's more reasonable to start with this is something that people at large trust, and then the other stuff just kind of evolves and comes to be. Because if you look at the dollar, for example, it's not like it's backed by anything. It's literally backed by nothing. And so it's a trust system. And as a result of that trust that we have, those other three attributes that he cited, including medium of exchange, store of value, all that's why that's able to exist. Okay? But then he cites another one. He says, this is another function of money. I'm sorry, there is another function of money that is hidden and rarely discussed as a means of social control. Cryptocurrency forces this function into the open. Now, pause a note here. He never fleshed out that idea. He made an assertion there, and maybe he has some compelling thoughts in his mind that he just chose to not share with us. I do not know, which is also weird. You just made a gigantic assertion right there. Fine, talk about it. Maybe you have some reasonable points even, but you didn't put it in your amicus brief. It's not like it was too long or anything. The damn thing's 3 pages effectively. The rest of it was just the application leading up to it and the table of contents and your credentials and all that stuff. But the actual amicus brief, if you take out the chart and the half a page that's a signature line, it's 3 pages. I'm just saying you could have thrown more stuff in there if you really wanted to explain why you're saying the stuff that you're saying, but he didn't. And then it gets even more weird. So note that we just got through Roman numerals 1, 2, and 3, and now we're jumping to Roman numeral 6. We're jumping up to Roman numeral 6. And, that's the final one. So I'm just left wondering where Roman numerals 4 and 5. Or is it that he thought that this Roman numeral 6 is actually a 4? I don't know. Oh, this guy. What's this guy's name? Is William... I meant to say his name. I don't think I said it. It was on the screen earlier. Let me highlight this. This guy's name is William Michael Cunningham, and he's an economist. Okay, he's got an MBA and a whole bunch of fancy credentials and stuff. So anyway, then you get to the summary, and this is a gem. He writes the following: by facilitating, via ineffective regulatory supervision, the creation of an environment of greed and unethical behavior that has been exploited by the defendant, so he's ripping on Ripple there, the plaintiff in 2008 helped cost the nation $19.2 trillion, helped set the stage for the election of a true demagogue as president with a corresponding loss of life due to incompetence. So he's talking about the pandemic there. The plaintiff's incompetence increased the speed with which China will overtake the U.S. in GDP terms, set the stage for the eventual replacement of the U.S. dollar as a global reserve, as forecast below. And if you want to pause and look at this thing, I mean, he's got expectation in terms of global reserve dominance in 2031. Shows the United States dollar, Bitcoin, and some other currencies. Whatever. Next page. The public interest. That's what he titled the rest of this. The overriding public interest is in fair, efficient, fully functioning markets. Fully functioning markets minimize informational asymmetries. Indeed, free, clear, and fully functioning markets operate as value discovery mechanisms via the process of determining the price of an asset in the marketplace through the interactions of informed, rational buyers and sellers. The actions of the defendant, intentional or not, prevented accurate valuation. Buyers were not informed. They paid too much for an item at issue, given the undisclosed and elevated risk of loss. Pause. What is he talking about there? If he's talking about XRP, and he didn't cite it, but I don't know what else he'd be talking about. I don't think he's talking about Ripple stock. If he's talking about XRP there, well, Ripple didn't even issue it. What are you talking? Buyers were not informed? Not informed of what? It's a decentralized cryptocurrency that Ripple didn't control and doesn't control. What are you talking about? It's about the supply and demand. It's about people jumping into a nascent asset class. Nobody at that time back then especially, and it's still unclear now, but it was way more unclear back in 2012 and 2013, what was going to happen with cryptocurrencies? Would they continue to exist? And if so, what would happen? Would they just be used as money? Would there be other things that might happen with them? And so these were people, a lot of them tech nerds back in the earliest of days, not all of them, but there's a lot of that back then. And it was just the case that people were purchasing something that there was no way for anyone to know it was going to happen. It wasn't like a stock where you could reasonably even have disclosures about it. It's more like, yeah, so here's some computer code that nobody controls. Have at it if you so choose. It wasn't doing anything other than the initial utility of XRP, which was to prevent spam of the network, because every transaction costs a fraction of a bit of XRP, and if there's more transactions, then that gets more expensive. That's the way that it's programmed to work. And it's worked very well. You can't spam the XRP ledger effectively as a result, because you'll go broke, But what is he talking about there? He doesn't say XRP, so I'm making an assumption he's talking about XRP. And if he's talking about Ripple stock, I don't know what the hell he's talking about, because there are accredited investors that go the route of making purchases. You can buy Ripple shares on secondary markets. You actually can do that, but he doesn't say that either. So what the hell is he talking? Do you see how weird this is? This is incoherent babble. It really is. And I'm so curious. Is Judge Torres going to accept this just because she accepted every other one? Or will this be the first amicus brief where she's like, oh, hell no. That's what I'm curious about. I'm very curious to see if this thing actually gets accepted by Judge Torres. Anyway, it continues. The defendant's business model depends upon the continuation of the informational asymmetry. Buyers use information on regulatory compliance and legal standing to determine, in part, with whom to conduct business. Without a formal determination, buyers are likely to continue to be at the mercy of powerful, unethical sellers. I still know what he's talking about there. The informational asymmetry at the center of this case reasserts itself. Market failure at some point results. Do any of you know what he's talking about? Is anybody out there listening know what the hell this guy is talking about? Because I get a kick out of this, but wow, what a hot mess. This is a dumpster fire of an amicus brief. And then he says, we note that the Howey test, a standard created by the Supreme Court to determine which transactions qualify as investment contracts, is an inappropriate basis for regulatory action in this environment. Okay, fair enough on that, whatever. We suggest the SEC does not have direct, uncontested authority over cryptocurrencies. When blockchain is used for currency, or in the case of other emerging applications for the technology, the Department of the Treasury, given its clear and historical role in the area of U.S. currency, should be the lead regulator. Function determines the appropriate regulator. So pause. If this guy believes that function determines the appropriate regulator, well, what do you do with a decentralized cryptocurrency that can function as a number of different things? And he never explains that either. It's just the Treasury because reasons. What the hell is this? My God. Oh, man. And I thought that, SBF was going on a drunk tirade all up on the Twitters with the random tweets, and I highlighted some of that in a video yesterday. This is at least as incoherent, if not more so. Oh, man. Anyway, it continues. Cryptocurrencies and blockchain are simply too potentially important and impactful for the SEC's smaller, narrower regulatory footprint. The SEC might be given some limited ability to regulate blockchain applications that pass the Howey test. In cases where a product is unambiguously defined as a security, the SEC may have to play a role. Pause. That's what's being argued in this case, damn it. What are you talking about, son? What are you talking about? At the heart of this is whether or not there is an investment contract and whether or not it applies to XRP. The Howey test. Whether or not the Howey test does. What? Okay. And then he says, that is not the case here. We suggest the court mandate the Treasury adopt oversight of cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies and create a new office or division to do so. Again, pause. The court can't do that. The court doesn't have the power to do that. Congress is in charge of who's in charge of this. That's it. Continues. With this case, the SEC attempts to impose an inefficient regulatory approach, one that favors large financial institutions and discourages small innovators. This approach is entirely unsuited for the growing cryptocurrency marketplace. Regulators in other parts of the world are anxious to take advantage of our mistakes. As we noted in 2006, quote, competitive advantage with respect to capital access is available to any country with significant economic potential and a modest telecommunications infrastructure, end quote. Okay, I just, what? I don't know why he's talking about these things. I don't. And then he wraps up by saying, blockchain technology's potential is simply too positive and large to risk on a regulatory agency with a spotty track record of protecting the public. We think it better to upgrade our regulatory infrastructure in order to be able to fully capture the large anticipated social benefits from this technology. Unfortunately, unless the judiciary steps in, we see little chance the public interest will prevail. Okay, if that's what you say, William Michael Cunningham. What did I just cover on this channel? What the hell was this? I don't even know what I'm doing, man. Like, I don't even know what's going on anymore. Like, I know that I'm not the only one having this reaction here, but that's why I was like, okay. It was filed. Look, it's filed. I cover all the amicus briefs. That's the deal. This is an amicus brief. I covered it. What a train wreck. I just don't know. You guys tell me in the comment section below if you think Judge Torres is actually going to accept this. I have no idea. She's been so liberal with this, and that's fine. You know, if that's her prerogative, whatever, and she doesn't want to go by the own rules that she set within the court, okay, fine. I don't care. I don't care. But this one in particular, it's just like a big old WTF, mate. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because if anything I say or write, that would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Family Sedan.